The city was still awake though midnight had long passed. Its streets glittered with neon lights, the sound of distant car horns echoing against the cold silence of tall glass towers. Among those towers stood the most magnificent of them all, an architectural marvel, with its top floor wrapped in a golden glow. Inside that tower lived Adrian Cole, one of the wealthiest men in the country, a billionaire whose name was synonymous with power, empire, and untouchable success. But behind the layers of wealth and the image of perfection, Adrian Cole sat alone in his vast office, staring at the floor-to-ceiling windows that reflected the city he practically owned. His eyes weren't filled with triumph. They were red, swollen from a rare thing for him, tears. His empire was collapsing, not financially, but personally. Adrian had lost his family's trust, his marriage was nothing more than a paper bond, and his children treated him like a stranger. Despite his billions, he couldn't buy peace, nor mend the cracks that had spread silently through his soul. At that moment, for the first time in years, Adrian Cole whispered something he had never admitted aloud. "I can't fix it." The words cracked as they left his throat. He buried his face in his palms and let out a cry that echoed through the empty office. To the world, Adrian was iron and marble, but here he was, a broken man, crying like a child who had lost his way. Far below, on the darkened street, a figure stirred. Wrapped in torn clothes, his face covered in the dust of survival, sat a homeless beggar named Samuel. He had been living near the tower for months, invisible to the people who walked past him daily, invisible to the luxury cars that swept by without slowing. But tonight, the silence of the streets carried something unusual to his ears. He heard the cry. It wasn't the cry of hunger, nor the cry of drunken laughter, but something deeper, raw pain. Samuel tilted his head, following the faint sound that trickled from above, his eyes squinting toward the glowing penthouse of the billionaire. For reasons even he couldn't explain, Samuel whispered to himself, "That man, he's hurting." Hours later, fate decided to weave its threads. Adrian, desperate for air, left his office and stepped into the cold night. His chauffeur had already left, and he dismissed security, craving solitude. He walked without direction, his tailored suit clashing with the filth of the alleys he wandered into. That's when their worlds collided. Samuel, curled up with a thin blanket, noticed the tall figure walking by. Something in Adrian's expression froze him. He wasn't just a passerby, he was a man carrying invisible chains. Without thinking, Samuel called out in his raspy voice, "Sir, are you lost?" Adrian paused. For the first time in years, someone wasn't asking him for money, a deal, or a favor. The voice was rough, but the question pierced him. He turned, staring at the ragged man. "Lost," Adrian muttered, almost laughing bitterly. "I built half this city. I own more than anyone could dream of. And yet, yes, I'm lost." Samuel's cracked lips curved into a faint smile. "That's the kind of lost money can't guide you out of." Adrian narrowed his eyes. He should have walked away. But something about this beggar, his calmness, his certainty, held him in place. "What would you know about it?" Adrian snapped, frustration lacing his tone. Samuel met his gaze steadily. "Enough to survive every day when I've got nothing. Enough to know that some problems can't be solved by gold, only by heart." Adrian felt a sting. He hadn't heard words like these in years, words that weren't polished, rehearsed, or fake. He sank down on the steps beside Samuel, shocking even himself. The billionaire sat beside the beggar. The silence between them stretched until Adrian finally spoke, his voice breaking. "I can't correct it. My family, my children. I thought giving them everything would make them love me, respect me. But I see it now. They never needed the world. They just needed me, and I wasn't there." Samuel listened carefully, nodding slowly, as though he had heard confessions like this before. "So, you gave them wealth but starved them of time." Adrian swallowed hard. "Yes." Samuel sighed. "I once had a family too." His eyes clouded, memories rushing back. A wife, a daughter. "I lost them because I chased pride instead of love. I thought being right was more important than being kind. By the time I realized, they were gone." The air grew heavy. For the first time, Adrian saw not just a beggar, but a man carrying his own ruins. "I ruined it," Adrian whispered. "And I can't fix it." Samuel turned his head, his eyes piercing despite the years of hardship. He leaned closer and said slowly, firmly, "You can't fix the past. But you can correct the present. That's what matters." The words struck Adrian like lightning. Correct the present. Adrian stared at Samuel, this man whom the world dismissed as nothing, yet in that moment, his words carried more value than all the advice Adrian had bought with millions. "Why are you telling me this?" Adrian asked. Samuel gave a faint, weary smile. "Because I see a man on the edge of the same cliff I once fell from. And if I can correct even one person's path, maybe my story won't end in vain." Adrian's eyes welled again, but this time with something different, clarity. He hadn't expected salvation in the dirty streets from a man who owned nothing. Yet, here it was. Before he could respond, Samuel spoke again, softer this time. "You still have them. A wife, children. Don't wait until they become ghosts in your memory like mine. Correct it now. Go to them. Sit with them. Listen. And this time, don't lead with your wallet, lead with your heart." Adrian sat frozen, absorbing every word. His chest felt lighter, though he hadn't yet moved. For years he had paid therapists, advisors, consultants, and none had said it so simply. Samuel's eyes glistened under the flicker of a broken street lamp. "The world calls me a beggar. Maybe I am. But tonight, I see clearly, you're poorer than me in the things that matter. But you don't have to stay that way." Adrian finally stood. He reached into his pocket, pulling out a thick bundle of bills, but Samuel raised a hand and shook his head. "No. Don't cheapen this with money. Keep it. Correct it." Adrian's hand trembled. Slowly, he put the money back into his pocket. He looked at Samuel, and for the first time in years, whispered, "Thank you." Samuel simply nodded, curling back under his thin blanket. "Go. It's not too late. Yet." Adrian walked away, but every step echoed Samuel's words in his mind. Correct the present. Correct it. He returned to his tower before dawn, carrying not wealth, but a seed of wisdom planted by a man society called worthless. And for the first time in years, Adrian Cole felt something stir inside him, hope. Adrian Cole hadn't slept. Dawn painted the skyline gold, but he remained seated by the window of his penthouse, Samuel's words echoing inside his mind. "You can't fix the past. But you can correct the present." He pressed his palms together, staring at the reflection of his tired face. For decades, he had worn masks. CEO, billionaire, philanthropist, but never the simplest one, a father. His children knew his money, not his embrace. His wife knew his empire, not his love. The ache inside him was unbearable, but Samuel's voice had lit a fire of determination. Adrian stood, loosened the tie that hung like a noose around his neck, and whispered, "No more running. I'll correct it, whatever the cost." The first attempt, he drove himself, something he hadn't done in years, to the family estate just outside the city. The mansion, surrounded by iron gates and manicured gardens, looked grand as ever, but to Adrian it seemed colder than the streets he had wandered the night before. Inside, his wife, Eleanor, sat at the breakfast table, her elegant features etched with quiet bitterness. His son, Daniel, scrolled through his phone, barely looking up, while his daughter, Amelia, rushed past with headphones in her ears. Adrian cleared his throat. "Good morning." No response, only the clink of Eleanor's spoon against her teacup. He tried again, softer. "Amelia, Daniel, may I join you?" Daniel finally looked up, his eyes sharp. "Since when do you eat breakfast with us?" The words stung more than Adrian expected. He pulled out a chair, sitting anyway. "Since today, I want to start over." Eleanor's laugh was low, bitter. "Start over? After 20 years of absence? You can't just appear at this table and pretend like we're waiting for you." Adrian's chest tightened. He wanted to defend himself, but Samuel's words echoed. "Don't lead with your wallet, lead with your heart." "I know I've failed you," Adrian admitted, his voice unsteady. "I thought giving you everything would be enough. But I see it now, it wasn't what you needed. You needed me." Amelia, pausing by the door, looked at him for a fleeting second. A crack appeared in her guarded eyes, but she left without a word. Daniel shoved his chair back. "You can't fix this with apologies. It's too late." He stormed upstairs, leaving silence behind. Eleanor stared at Adrian, her eyes wet but hardened. They're not children anymore. You waited too long. Adrian lowered his head. He had expected anger, but not this emptiness. The second chance. That night, Adrian called Samuel. He had left a burner phone and a simple promise. If you really mean to change, come find me again. When Samuel's voice rasped through the line, Adrian felt an odd relief. They won't listen, Adrian confessed. Samuel chuckled softly. They shouldn't. Not yet. Change isn't words, it's wounds slowly healing. Keep showing up. Keep correcting. Adrian breathed deeply. Even if they never forgive me, then at least you'll know you tried, Samuel replied. And sometimes, that's the only correction life allows. The hard road. Days turned to weeks. Adrian canceled meetings, postponed deals, and began appearing in places he never had. Amelia's school recitals, Daniel's basketball games, Eleanor's charity dinners. At first, his presence was met with suspicion, then annoyance. Daniel often glared at him from across the court. Amelia rarely acknowledged him, but once, he noticed her scanning the crowd, almost checking if he had really come. Eleanor remained distant, her smiles reserved for others. Still, Adrian endured. Each time he heard Samuel's words, correct the present, he began writing letters, raw, unpolished words of regret, and left them on Amelia's desk, in Daniel's backpack, on Eleanor's nightstand. Not all were read, some were torn, others ignored. But a few remained untouched, as if kept in secret. For the first time, Adrian wasn't buying love. He was earning patience. The breakthrough. One rainy evening, Amelia knocked on his study door. Adrian looked up, startled. Dad, she began, hesitant. The word dad itself was a gift. I read your letter, she whispered. About how you missed my first piano recital. Her voice cracked. I waited for you that night. I kept looking at the door. When you didn't come, I stopped playing for years. Tears blurred Adrian's vision. He reached out but stopped himself. Afraid she'd pull away. I'm sorry, Amelia, I can't erase that night. But if you'll let me, I'll be at every recital from now on. She studied him, uncertain, but then nodded faintly. We'll see. And she left. For Adrian, that small nod felt like the sun breaking through clouds. The consequence. But not all wounds healed. Daniel grew colder. One night, Adrian tried again. Son, please, tell me how to reach you. Daniel snapped, his voice trembling with rage. Reach me. You don't get to. You weren't there when I needed you the most. When I had my first heartbreak, when I failed my exams, when Mom cried herself to sleep. You can't just show up now and think I'll forget all that. Adrian's heart broke. He wanted to hold his son, but Daniel shoved past him, slamming his door. Later, Eleanor approached Adrian quietly. He has a right to his anger. You left me to raise them alone. And now you want to reclaim the title of father overnight. Adrian's lips quivered. I don't want a title. I just want a chance. Eleanor's eyes softened for a moment but quickly hardened again. A chance comes before the damage. You're too late, Adrian. Don't you see? Her words carved into him like knives. The visit. In despair, Adrian returned to the streets where Samuel lived. He found him under the same flickering street lamp, coughing from the cold. They won't forgive me, Adrian whispered, kneeling beside him. Maybe Daniel never will. Maybe Eleanor is right. I waited too long. Samuel studied him, his eyes tired yet clear. And still, you tried. That's more than most. But it hurts, Adrian admitted. To know that no matter how much I change, some things can't be undone. Samuel nodded slowly. That's the truth of life. Some mistakes leave scars too deep. But listen, Adrian, redemption isn't about winning everyone back. It's about living differently, so you don't lose yourself again. Adrian felt tears roll down his cheeks. For the first time, he realized Samuel wasn't just advising him, he was living through him, correcting his own mistakes vicariously. Do they know what you've taught me? Adrian asked. Samuel smiled faintly. They don't need to. What matters is that you know. The final scene. Months later, Amelia performed at a small school concert. Adrian sat in the front row, tears streaming as she played the piano with grace. When she looked up, their eyes met. This time, she smiled faintly, and he smiled back. Daniel, however, sat at the far end, arms crossed, refusing to meet his father's gaze. Eleanor clapped politely, her distance still intact. Adrian understood now. He wouldn't get everything back. He wouldn't erase the years of absence. His son's heart might never soften, his wife's love might never return. But his daughter smiled. He was present, and he was no longer the man who cried alone in a golden tower. That night, walking home, Adrian stopped by Samuel's usual spot. But Samuel wasn't there. Only the thin blanket lay folded neatly, as if left behind. No one knew where he had gone. Some said he had died quietly on the streets. Others claimed he had moved on. Adrian stared at the empty spot, his chest heavy with grief but also gratitude. "Wherever you are, Samuel," he whispered, "you corrected me." The wind carried his words away, and Adrian knew, life would never be perfect, but it would be honest. And that was enough.